Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm Millie from Blink Lettering. For those of you who are new here, I am a calligrapher and hand lettering artist. I love sharing videos over on my Instagram of all of my lettering and calligraphy, and I also have a little Etsy shop. So make sure you go ahead and check those out. If you're interested in learning calligraphy and lettering, then make sure you head over to my website where you can subscribe to my newsletter. I've got a few exciting things coming up in the next few months which will help you guys learn how to use a brush pen and how to create beautiful letters. So yeah, make sure you head over and subscribe to my newsletter. Today I've got an exciting video that I've been wanting to do for ages. I quite honestly have just been a bit lazy getting the supplies that I needed to actually create the video. But the other week I did a bit of shopping on Cult Pens and I bought lots of white pens. So if you follow me over on Instagram, you'll see that I love creating lettering with highlights and shadows, but I sometimes feel like the white pen I'm using isn't always great. Like sometimes the colour of the ink shows through or like the white ink fades. So I thought I'd create a video for you guys today to find out which is the best white pen from these bad boys. So I basically went on Cult Pens and just found as many white pens as I could. Now I've stuck with quite thin nibs because I always do quite small lettering. I didn't want to go too thick like any of the chalk pens or anything like that. So all of these are quite thin. There's a few slightly thicker ones, but most of them are quite thin. So let's see which pen is the best. To find the best white pen out of these 10, I've decided to create this kind of grid system just so I can see what works best on different materials and different pens. So firstly we've got the list of names, so I've just written these down already, and that just starts from top to bottom going from right to left here. So I'm going to be starting off with the gel kind of pens, which are these 7 here, and the Faber-Castell is a bit of a miscellaneous pen, and then we've kind of got more paint markers and markers at the end. So that's the order I'll be going in. I'm going to be starting with the Uniball Signo Broad Gel Pen, which is the one that I already use. So let's see if this is already the best pen or whether there are some better ones out there. I've created some various tests for each pen to try out. So the first test we have is black paper. I just want to see how opaque it is. I really like doing white line work on black paper, so I think this would be a good test to see how well it works on there. Next we have dry brush pens. What I mean by this is it's ink that has dried on the paper already. The reason I've done this is sometimes I may be lettering quite a lot and the ink has some time to dry, but then I'm also going to test it on wet brush pen, so what it's like when I've literally just put the ink down, because sometimes I'm a little bit impatient and then it's really annoying when I'm trying to, you know, put some highlight on and it all just bleeds together. So we're going to see if there's any pen that suits my impatientness. So that's what the wet brush pens section is over here. I've got a few brush pens next to me, so I'll just test them out. Just going through which pens I've used here. So these 2 are the Pentel Hybrid Touch sign pens. Then we've got these 3 that are Tombow dual brush pens. I've done a mix of black and colour. I find that sometimes with the Uniball Signo gel pen is that the colour kind of comes through, but not necessarily on the black. Then we've got a Crayola Super Tip, an Ecoline brush pen, which is kind of like a watercolour in a way, so I thought that'd be quite interesting as a water-based ink, whether it would pick it up. And then lastly is the Artline Sticks pens. And then we've also got watercolour. Now this I've actually let dry. I tend to let my watercolour dry before I even use white pen on it anyway, because when it's wet it's obviously just not going to work. So let's get stuck in. I'm not going to be doing anything too fancy. I'll just be doing some scribbles and like kind of highlights on each one, and we'll just see how it works. So on this white Uniball, I'm having to go over a little bit. What's it like if we scribble in a block? So that's looking pretty opaque, but this is what I find with the Uniball. When I go over, it starts to like pick up the ink and make it disappear. So you can only really colour in once, and then when you start going over, it just starts picking up and it gets a bit scratchy. So I find with this pen, when I just do one stroke, it kind of doesn't do a solid colour, so I have to kind of colour over a few times. So here you can kind of see that the white on this is kind of turning a bit pink. Not so much on the other pens though, it's mainly just on the Pentel Hybrid Touch. I already know how this pen works, so I don't have too much to comment on, but it's a good basis to kind of compare how this pen will work to others. It's things like on this pink where, if you can see, the white's gone a bit pink itself. It's not as bright white or opaque, and on the watercolour as well, it's not too opaque. So let's see how the next pen is. So this is Uniball's Signo Angelic Pastel Gel Pen. I reckon it'll probably be quite similar because it's both Uniball. I think it might just be a thinner nib. Yeah, you can see that's a much thinner nib, and actually it doesn't look as opaque. Yeah, so you can see already it's not as opaque. If I go over, it does make it look more opaque, but again, it's just picking up some of the ink. I do like how thin this nib is though. It's making it really easy to do the highlights on some of the thinner lines. I'm finding that just one stroke is actually working quite well. I'm not having to like go up and down too much. So I love how thin this is. It's just not as opaque as the other Uniball Signo pen. But I do like how thin it is on some of these. And you can see the colour is changing, especially on the pink. There, you can see it. Yeah, so it's not as bright white. And especially on the black and the watercolour, it's really not opaque at all. Next up, I've got the Sakura Jelly Roll Basic Gel Pen. And I think I got this in fine or medium. I was just looking for something that just had a bit of a thinner nib. Oh wow, that's really thin. I love how thin that is. Doesn't seem that opaque on the black, and I'm just trying to go over some of the existing ink, and it doesn't seem to want to add anything more to it. Let's see what it's like on. Ooh. Doesn't seem to be wanting to do anything. Have I broken this? No, I think it's just really faint. It's hardly coming out at all. So that didn't work too well. As you can see, it's not opaque at all. It's barely showing up on any of the pen. I do absolutely love how thin this line is though. So perhaps it'd be a really good pen for like detail on black or maybe craft paper, but not one for highlights, especially on watercolour. Next up is the Jelly Roll Glaze Pen. Now after that Sakura Jelly Roll Basic Gel Pen not working out so well, I'm not sure what to expect from this. So I think this said that it was like 3D ink. From what I remember, basically it's a little bit different to the basic, and I thought maybe if it had a different consistency it might be more opaque. So let's give this a go. Okay, so that's kind of transparent, but it definitely looks like it's quite inky and quite blobby, if that makes sense. It doesn't seem to be doing much, it's just wet. I mean, this is not white really. It just seems to be kind of making a clear coating on top of the ink already. It's not coming up as white at all. It's not even doing anything on the watercolour, it's just making it kind of shiny. seems to be a bit of a disaster in terms of highlighting. However, I've noticed that over here, the ink seems to be drying, especially where it was much thinner. Can you see that? So like around the edges of the scribble and like the end, it's looking much more white and it's becoming more opaque. So I wonder if like these will become more opaque over time. So let's see what happens. It looks like on the watercolor it's just kind of picked up the pink and moved it around a little bit. So onto our next one, which is the Pilot Choose. I've never heard of this one before. It says it's a pigment jelly roller. It looks like the nib is quite thin. So let's see what it's like. So far not good. Might need a bit of encouragement. Come on. Why is nothing coming out? There we go. So now we've got the ink flowing. It's looking quite opaque actually. If I just scribble over here. However, it looks like it's drying quite weird on this black. I like how thin the nib is. However, when I press down, I don't know if you can tell, but the nib is going inside the barrel. So at the top it keeps kind of jerking the ink around. I'm not sure if it's meant to do that. It's like it's loose. Can you hear that? Oh, that's why. Duh. So that wasn't screwed on properly. Hopefully it won't wriggle around as much now. Okay, so that started off quite opaque, but it's kind of dried a bit weird, but it has worked quite nicely on the highlights. I'd say that it hasn't picked up the colour as much, but it's not quite opaque either. So far, the uni ball is definitely winning, which is probably why it got suggested to me in the first place. Next we have this pen, another one I've never heard of before. This is the Zebra Sarasa clip, and it's a 0.5mm nib. And it's a clip pen, so there's no lid. So I'm quite intrigued to know if this would dry out quite easily. And it's got a little red blob on it. Let's get that off. Ooh. Okay, this might need some encouragement just to get the ink flowing. Well, it's not coming out that opaque. In fact, it's not really coming out at all. Again, it's a nice thin nib, but that's just not doing anything. I don't know if I've still got some red on there. Yeah, that's just not working great. I'm having to like scribble quite a lot on these lines just to get some sort of colour. I don't know if this pen is just not working properly, or whether they're always like this, but it does not seem to be working. So I just did the whole like unscrew the barrel and blow in the end, if you remember doing that when you were a kid at school, hoping it might work a bit better now. If you've got this pen, the Zebra Sarasa clip, whatever, even if I'm saying it right, I don't know. If you have this pen and it works well for you, then let me know in the comments. I'm not entirely sure if this is just a dud pen or whether it actually works like this. So that was a bit of a fail. You can probably see it's a bit scratchy on the end, and like it's not very opaque at all, and it's hardly showing up on any of these highlights. Next up we have the Pentel Hybrid Gel Grip DX pen. I thought it looked quite similar to the Uniball Signo Broad Gel pen, so that's why I picked this one. Pentels are my absolute favourite when it comes to brush pens, so let's see if they might be my favourite when it comes to white pens. Oh yeah, that looks good. I like that. It feels very similar to the Uniball actually. really opaque just from one coat. What happens if I go back over? So the ink's not being picked up by the ball really. That works quite nicely. It is drying in a bit of a weird patchy way. So the downside is this is quite a thick nib, which makes it a bit harder on the thinner strokes. But it does say it's medium, so I wonder if you could get a fine version. So I think that's worked pretty well, very similar to the Uniball Signo gel pen. However, it has dried a bit patchy and like kind of like it's dried out in like cracks. But it does work really well on the highlights. It's showing through a little bit of the colour, but I think potentially, let's see if we did a few more coats on that white there. I think you could potentially make this quite opaque with just a few coats. Yeah, that's a winner in my eyes so far. So that's all our gel pens. I think the best is probably still the Uniball Signo Board gel pen, which is the one I've been using a lot, and this Pentel Hybrid. I've also just seen how white this Sakura Jelly Roll Glaze pen has become on the black paper. It's not really done too much on the actual inks, but I absolutely love how it's changed on here. Like that N is so bright now. Next is a bit of a different pen. I have loads of the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens, but I didn't know it came white. So I was quite excited to see this is actually a bullet tip. They did do a brush pen too, but I thought because I only use it for highlights, I'd much rather a bullet tip than a brush. As you can see, the nib's much thicker, so I'm probably going to have a bit of a hard time on some thinner strokes, but yeah, I was quite intrigued by this one. It says it's India ink and it's waterproof, so hopefully that means it will work well on the watercolour. Okay, so it's not as opaque as I thought it would be, which is a bit of a shame because the Faber-Castell Pitt Artist pens are so bright and pigmented. So it's kind of colouring the nib a bit. I don't know if you can see that, but it's picking up some of the colour on the nib. I'm a bit disappointed how opaque it is on the black, and I don't know if you can see, but all the highlights on these have gone a bit grey. So yeah, a bit sad that that hasn't worked as well as I thought. Now we're moving on to some marker pens, which I'm kind of expecting to work quite well. Sorry, I don't think I introduced this pen to you. It's the Uni Paint marker, and I got it in extra fine. It says it's oil based and opaque, so hopefully it'll work quite nicely. Well, that doesn't look opaque to me. Maybe it's just this card. Maybe there's something wrong with this black card, but they're all fading quite weirdly. Well, that hasn't worked as well as I hoped. I wonder if I go over a second coat, how would that work? No, it's just drying a little bit weird. Doesn't seem to like it too much. Let's move on to this one then, which is the Sakura Pen Touch. So it says it's quick dry, permanent and opaque. It's got quite a similar nib to the Uni Paint one. So far on the highlights, it's okay. Like, I think if I went over these a few times, it would work a bit better. But it just doesn't seem to like just one stroke. here are the results. I've tested out 10 pens for you, a range of gel pens, markers, random drawing pen, and it seems like I have been using the right white pen all along. I think the Uniball Signo gel pen has definitely come out top. It does show the pink quite a lot on this pink, but on the other colours it's not too bad. This one, I'm quite sad it's not more opaque because I absolutely love how thin it is. I could potentially build up the colour and bring out the white a little bit more. And I love how much this Sakura jelly roller has changed colour since first doing it, but it's not really worked well as a highlight. The Pentel Hybrid Gel Grip DX, that's worked really well too. I think I quite like to use a combination of the Pentel and Uniball going forward whenever I'm doing my highlights. And then these paint pens, which actually I had a lot of faith in. I thought they were going to be really good because you can use them on like ceramics and metal and wood, but clearly not on ink and paper. The Sakura Pen Touch has worked out quite well on here, but it's just dried really weirdly on this black paper. I'm not sure if it's the paper that I'm using, because a lot of the inks have dried a bit kind of patchy and cracked. Hardly any of them worked on the watercolour, which I'm not too surprised about. I don't tend to use it on watercolour too much. I think the Uniball has worked quite well, and so has the Pentel Hybrid. I haven't found too much difference between a wet brush pen and the dry brush pen, so that's always reassuring to know when I'm being impatient. I can just go straight onto the ink without it drying. But yeah, after all of that, I was already using the right white pen. So if you were thinking of going out and trying to find a nice white pen that's good on black paper and also highlights on any of your calligraphy, then I definitely suggest this one, which is the Uniball Signo Broad Gel Pen, and also this one, which is the Pentel Hybrid. I'll make sure I leave all the links below for all of these pens so you can give them a try yourself. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching this video, make sure you give it a big thumbs up, and if you want to see more than me, then hit that red subscribe button somewhere down there. Again, thanks so much for watching and see you soon. Bye!